Hi everyone, welcome to the Tech Leverage. In this video, we will learn how to use Gmail APIs via Python. So let's get started. Let us understand what is the Gmail API. Okay, so an API is an application programming interface. API stands for Application Programming Interface, which allows two different applications to connect and talk to each other. So in our case, the two different applications are Gmail on one side and the Python desktop client or the Python program on the other side. Now using APIs or the application programming interface, we will connect to Gmail via Python, right? And what can these APIs do? So these APIs can help us get data from different applications, okay, or send commands to different applications. For example, in case of Gmail APIs, we can read our email, we can read our labels, or we can even send emails. We can make the sending of emails automatic. We can migrate our accounts and standardize our email signatures across an organization and so on. Right? So let's get back to our presentation and let's see what are the different steps involved in using Gmail APIs via Python. So for this particular video, we have the following objectives. We'll learn how to set up the environment. We'll install the API client library for Python. We'll set up the sample, we'll run the sample application, and then we will enhance a particular use case of reading emails from the Gmail APIs. Alright, so what are the prerequisites for this project? This project has certain prerequisites. For example, you need to have Python 10.7 or greater as recommended by Google. You should have the pip installed, you should have a Google Cloud project, and you should have a Google account with Gmail enabled. I'll explain all of these in greater detail as we go through this video. One thing to note here is I have tested this with Python 3.9 and it is working. So I don't think it is a mandate to have Python 3.10.7 or greater on our system. It works, the code actually works with earlier versions of Python, and I have tested on Python 3.9. Okay, so let's get started with setting up the environment needed for this particular project. There are 4 steps. The first step being enabling the API. The second step being authorize the credentials for a desktop application. Third, installing the Google Client library. And fourth is the configuring of sample code that they have given on their website. We will also enhance the sample code based on our requirement of reading the emails. Okay. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. So in setting up the environment, the first step is to enable the Gmail API in the Google Cloud Console. So let's go to the Google Cloud Console and let's enable our Gmail API. We'll click on this Enable API button and it will take us to our particular Google Cloud Console account. So to enable the API, we need to first select a project. I already have a test project here set up, but I will create a new project and we can call this Gmail API project. Here we don't have to select an organization because this is an individual account that I am using. So I will click on Create. It takes a couple of minutes to create a project. And here now we can see that our Gmail API project has been created and we can select this particular project, right? So it asks us to confirm that you're going to make changes to this Gmail API project and click on Next. You are about to enable the Gmail API. Let's click on Enable. Click on Enable. Now that we have enabled the APIs, let's click on this hamburger menu and let's go to API and services. Let's check for enabled API and services. So here if I click on enable API and services and search for Gmail, let's press enter. Here we see Gmail API is enabled and we can manage this API, we can try this API. And it gives an overview that with the Gmail APIs you can view or manage your Gmail mailbox data like threads, messages and labels. Let's look at the documentation. So there's a quick start guide which we are already looking at, right? So let's again go back to the hamburger menu and this time we are going to the credentials. So first we'll have to create credentials for this particular project, the Gmail API project that we have just created. Before creating credentials, we'll have to configure the consent screen for this project, right? Let's click on the configure consent screen. And here we'll have to choose user type external because the internal is only available for an organization. Let's click on create. Here the app name I will give Gmail API, user support email, contact charpesa@gmail.com. Now charpesa.com is my personal finance website, so I'll encourage all of you to check out charpesa.com. And developer, we don't have to give any app logo or app domain and authorized domain information. These are only when we are publishing a verified application that it is needed. So let's put in developer contact information. I'll paste my email. Make sure you're typing the correct email. And I'll click on save and continue. So we were getting an error because I was using the word Gmail API, which seemed a reserved keyword for this. So I just added the word project. So now we are using the Gmail API project as our project name. Let's go back to the consent screen once more. OAuth consent screen. The app name is Gmail API project. We have entered our user support email. And we do not enter the app domain or app logo. These are used for a verified application, which is a lengthy process. For us, we are only creating a test application, so we don't need all of these. Let's click on save and continue. Now, what are scopes? Scopes, as mentioned here, scopes express the permissions that your request users are authorized for your app. What this means are there are different scopes and different scopes do different functions. So if I click on add or remove scope and if I search for Gmail, we'll get Gmail API. And let's look at the different scopes that are available. So first is the Gmail API, which is mail.google.com. And this has the complete permissions over all of our Gmail data. So let's look at read only, the last one. Here, this API can only view or message when the add-on is running. The compose API, the compose scope will be able to manage drafts and send emails. And modify will be able to read, compose and send emails from your account. So the difference between the first and the second scope is it will not be able to delete anything from your email, the second one. However, the mail.google.com scope will be able to do everything on your data. So for our purposes, we will use this scope, which is the first one, mail.google.com. And let's click on update. So now there are different types of scopes also. Non-sensitive scopes do not require any particular permission. Sensitive scopes are scopes that request user data and these require verification. However, for our test case, since we are not publishing this application, we will not have to go through the verifying stage or the verification stage. And the restricted scopes are scopes that request access to highly sensitive user data. For example, it can permanently delete all of your emails. So use this very carefully. Now let's click Save and Continue. Now let's add test users. So here I will add the same email ID, contactcharpaisa@gmail.com, as a test user. Let's click on Add again, and here we see that the contactcharpaisa@gmail.com is now added. Let's click on Save and Continue. Here it will provide us a summary of our OAuth consent screen. The user type is external, the app name is Gmail API project, support email is contactcharpaisa.com, which is going to be your email in your case, which is the scope we are using for the Gmail API. Let's go back to our dashboard. Now we are going to create one credential for this particular project, and we need to create or select the OAuth 2.0 client IDs. So for the creating credentials part, we will click on this Create Credentials button, and we will select OAuth client ID. Here we will select the application type to be desktop, and we can write the name of the client as desktop Gmail API project. Let's click on Create. And we will see this in secret. This can always be accessed from the credentials in API and services. Let's click on the download JSON file. If we go back to our step, we have enabled the APIs and we have authorized credentials for the desktop application. Now the third step is to install the Google Client Library, and for this, let us switch to VS Code.